Blame versus responsibility. Recognizing where you are so that you can take back control. Our focus is all we get to see in life. Like a lantern in the dark, you only get to see a part of what actually is. Research shows that the human brain can only process about 137 bits of the 2 million pieces of information that are presented to us every second. Now, the way it filters this information is through your beliefs and the unconscious programs that you have running. One of the jobs of your unconscious mind is to prove you right and provide you with the evidence that supports your beliefs. It does what it thinks you want it to do. Have you ever said to the computer, "Do what I need you to do, not what I told you to do"? I sure have. Your unconscious mind, it's the same. It does what you tell it to do, whether that is out loud or in your mind. Many of us like to think that our unconscious mind is looking out for us, desiring the best for us in every moment. Sadly, this is not true. Our unconscious mind is not our tail-wagging loyal Labrador. Its role is to keep us alive, whether that means we're extremely happy with its choices or extremely unhappy. Makes no difference to it. Happy or sad, you're still alive, aren't you? Have you heard the saying, change is just outside your comfort zone, or something similar? This is because your unconscious mind is not designed to move outside of its perceived comfort zone, as that is where it believes fear enters, and in the unconscious mind, fear equals danger, so it holds you back from the change it sees as dangerous in any way it can. Fantastic when it comes to knowing not to step off a cliff, but it certainly can impede our forward growth and positive change. Your unconscious mind, it never switches off. It's always listening. It hears every one of your throwaway statements. Ever said something like this? "You are all driving me crazy." Or, "My job is killing me." Or, "If my partner leaves me, I think I'll die of sadness." What about, "I'm drowning from all the pressure I'm under"? Now, seeing as how its job is to keep you alive, it will do everything in its power to move you away from these things that you are telling it's threatening your life. Even though you meant it metaphorically, it doesn't know the difference. Ever said something like, "Oh, what I'd do for a week in bed," only to find yourself sick the following week? Or, "I'd give anything to not have to go to the family function this weekend," only to find that you trip on the back steps, sprain your ankle and you can't drive? Maybe you haven't tied the two things together before, but it's food for thought, isn't it? Your unconscious mind, it never stops doing its job. It works 24/7, listening, processing, and feeding back to you what you tell it. Your unconscious mind hears everything you say because about 90% of your daily programs are run automatically by your unconscious mind inside your head. Just as a brand new computer only runs the set programs it came with, so does your unconscious mind. Thankfully, like a computer, you can install new programs, or rather new beliefs and perspectives, that give you new options and a new way of doing things. Now you, like me, may not be very confident with the inward workings of computers and how it is they know how to do all the things they do. So let me give you a couple examples that might be a bit easier to relate to. I bet when you take a shower, you wash the same part of your body first every time. You grab the towel with the same hand, you dry your body the same way, you brush your teeth the exact same way, start on the same side and go around the same pattern. You do these things the exact same way every time without even ever really thinking about it. That's because you don't need to, as your unconscious mind has already mastered it, so it does it without needing to engage your conscious mind. It would actually take you consciously engaging your conscious mind to do it in a different order. Can you recall showering in times of intense emotional stress? Or while you're deep in thought about something other than showering, and yet you did it all perfectly while your conscious mind was focused on something completely different for the entire time? How about this one? Have you ever driven home and realized that you don't recall the majority of the journey? Knowing that you don't remember stopping at red lights, turning corners, watching for pedestrians, and yet you got home safe and sound and there is no flashing lights or sirens pulling up the driveway behind you. Who was driving? The same one that was showering you, your unconscious mind. These are some of the positive advantages of the unconscious mind. It runs our heart, lungs, blood, tells us when to swallow, when to blink, all without needing to check in with us to see if it's all right to carry out these actions. Remember the red flag word exercise in my presentation called What Stories Are You Telling Yourself? Keep working on this and see how your reality starts to change. When we feel like life is out of control, moving from blame to responsibility is how you take back control. You see, it's not so much what happens to you in life, but how you're seeing that situation. Now I'm going to share a story about a woman called Alice Hertz Summer. Alice was the oldest survivor of the Holocaust, and when she was 107 years old, she wrote a book called A Century of Wisdom, in which she talked about the things she attributed to her long life. Alice and her son spent 2 years in a concentration camp, and while she was there, Alice would play the piano. And she knew that her ability to play, and to play well, was what kept her and her son safe. Alice used to say, "When we can play, it can't be so terrible, for with music I was always happy." When her son would ask her questions like, "Why is there no food, Mum?" Because Alice did not know how to answer these questions, she decided she would just laugh a lot, because she said, "How can a child not laugh when they hear their mother laugh?" So despite their circumstances, she was thankful and remained optimistic. So what I'm saying here is that yes, sometimes horrible things happen, and for you, they may be happening right now. However, it's not so much about what happens to you in life, but how you are seeing that situation. When people are in responsibility mode, they are someone who owns their life and takes responsibility for the choices they have made. They don't blame themselves, but they own responsibility for the original decisions they made that got them to where they currently are, regardless of their circumstances. Remember what I told you about Maz and her wake-up call in the bottom of that phone booth? Remember how before she got her faculties back, she saw the kids and the dog jumping around in the car? Well, in that moment, she realized that she was responsible for everything that had happened in her life. Every choice she had made had gotten her to this place, this desperate moment where she was once again on the run to save her and her children's lives. She didn't have to say yes when that boy offered her that flower. She knew in her gut that he wasn't any good for her, but she chose to ignore it. Haven't we all stood at that fork in the road and made a decision we knew was wrong, but we did it anyway? I know I have, many times. A large reason behind this is that our unconscious mind is designed to seek the familiar road, the one it knows well and recognizes, because this seems to be the safer option. Remember, its job is not to make us happy, but keep us alive. Your unconscious mind believes safe, familiar paths lead to life, and unsafe, unfamiliar paths may lead to danger, and so they are best avoided. So when your unconscious mind has a choice to make, the first place it goes to is what is familiar, not necessarily what is best. How many of us receive praise and compliments well? How many of us thank the praiser and agree with their assessment of themselves or their situation? I don't know very many that do, though I truly admire those that can. Instead, don't most of us do the well-rehearsed and expected dance of rejecting compliments with things like, "Oh no, don't be silly, I'm not kind, pretty, successful, praiseworthy, etc." Our unconscious mind, it rejects what it does not recognize and accepts readily what it does recognize, and that is what it has heard the most often. If your view on life is something like, "No one ever complimented me or praised me when I was little, and I never felt loved as a child," then when someone says something nice to you, when people try to love you, you'll reject them and their compliments, no matter how desperate you are for them. Here's some examples you might be able to relate to. Oh, hey, I love your outfit. Your response might be something like, oh, this old thing, I found it in an op shop years ago. I really should throw it away. Or, I love your new haircut, it really suits you. Oh, my usual hairdresser was sick, so someone else cut it. I think maybe she was a student. She did a terrible job. Or, oh no, it looks terrible. I didn't have time to wash it today. What about, oh, I love your house. Oh no, I'm so embarrassed. You caught me just as I was about to clean up. The kids, the dog, the partner, they're all so messy. I'm so sorry you saw it in such a state. Any of these sound familiar? For some people, they had a lovely childhood full of praise and acceptance, and yet still they do the reject and deflect dance of the unconscious mind. They can still find it almost impossible to accept compliments. Why is this? This is where the new science of epigenetics comes into play, and we'll be looking deeper into this in the weeks ahead. Now, when Maz took responsibility in that moment, lying on the floor of the phone booth, everything changed for her. It was the turning point in her life because it put her back in charge. It gave her the power to make new decisions and change her future. People in responsibility mode can change how they feel and therefore make choices without the negative charge anymore. During this process, our frontal lobe lights up. This is the area at the front of our brain, behind what we call our forehead. It's where we make our forward, rational and smart decisions. It's where we do all our good thinking and strategizing. So a few things happen in the body when we are stressed. One is that the blood rushes out to the extremities, to the arms and legs, to support them in their fight or flight decisions. This leaves the brain and the gut in a lower supply of blood, and when we are stressed for long periods of time or frequently, it can lead to gut disorders. Another thing that happens is the lights in the front of the brain, in the frontal lobe, they switch off, and the lights at the back of the brain light up, ready for fight or flight responses only. No strategic thinking required or available. So when you're really stressed and emotional, you're actually dumber. Ever heard yourself say something like, I'm so angry I can't even think straight? Well, this is why. When you don't have that negative charge, the lights turn on in the front of your brain and off in the back, so you can see more clearly and feel more hopeful and positive. People in blame mode, they believe they can't control outside forces. They're resigned. To them it's a dead end. They just give in and they believe this is their lot in life, and they think, speak and act from this place of belief. Now, earlier this year during my 7-day challenge, I taught you how to do the peripheral wave that you can do to activate your own internal calm on purpose. So if you've forgotten, please go back and remind yourself about it, or send me a PM if you'd like me to send you a copy to print off, and place it somewhere you'll see it regularly until you master it and it becomes your go-to when you feel your emotions rising. This is an act of someone in responsibility mode, and we'll discuss this internal calm in a later presentation. People in responsibility mode, they have an attractive energy about them. Have you ever been with someone who you feel super safe with? You always want to hang out with them for just a little bit longer because of how you feel when you're with them? You know these kinds of people. Hey, you might even be one of those type of people. We all want to be where we feel good, don't we? Now, it's important to understand that you are not going to feel positive all the time. We're human after all. Sometimes you need to feel negative just long enough to be frustrated enough to make changes in your life for the better. Your emotions are like your internal GPS. They're there to let you know when you're going off track, to let you know when things need to change. Nowadays, when we travel, we tend to rely on our GPSs to guide us to new places, and it's right far more times than it's wrong. When it is wrong, it's usually the operator that got it wrong, as the GPS can only work with the information it's given. Our internal GPS, our gut instinct, is also very rarely wrong, and it also can only work with what it's been given by its operator. That's you, in case I lost you there. Your internal GPS can be telling you that you're off track quietly, and if you listen and make the correct changes, it goes along almost unnoticed. It's when you ignore it that things can really start to go wrong. Now, people in blame mode, they send away from energy and they're not drawn to you. They push people away, sometimes without even realizing it because of where they are focused. Have you ever felt that? Been around someone who it feels like they're constantly pushing you away? Or when you're around them, you just want to run and you feel compelled to make an excuse to leave. Maybe people do that to you. People in responsibility mode are light-hearted, fun and happy. They have a win attitude. They'll say things like, how did I contribute to this problem? I got myself into this. Now how will I get myself out of it? How can I change this situation for the better? What can I do to make this better for myself and for others? These are towards resolution and action-focused questions. People in blame mode are heavy-hearted, sad, depressed, and have a lose attitude. People here tend to say things like, it's not my fault. Why does this keep happening to me? Poor me. I do everything for them and I just get used. Why me? These are more stuck types of statements. They don't lead anywhere. They are away from statements and they are taking no responsibility for where they are at. They are blaming life and everyone around them. People in responsibility mode, they take ownership for their lives. They don't blame others or circumstances. They know that sometimes we just have to own our crap. They say things like, I got myself into this mess, so I can get myself out of it. They are ready to move forward and they are ready to resolve. People who are in responsibility mode are usually healthier than those in blame mode. They tend to learn lessons from life because they reflect on themselves and where the original choice they made occurred that created the direction to their current situation in the first place. They tend to look at their situation and inside themselves at what they could have done differently that could have led to a different outcome, and then they start to move in that direction. People in blame mode hold anger and resentment towards others. They point fingers a lot and they act blameless for the original decision that led them to their current situation. This is why they are stuck. People in blame mode usually lack motivation, energy, and are unhealthy. The negative cycles in their lives continue as they blame everything and everyone around them. It was their mum, their dad, their ex-partner, their kids, their friend, even the dog. It was never them, and therefore in their eyes it was never their fault, and by association, never their responsibility. If you can't see how a choice you made led to any given situation, you are then trapped and you can't possibly know how to make a different choice next time. I have had situations in my life where I have defended my choice to be in relationship with people who I knew were bad for me. I could tell you how it wasn't their fault that they acted as they did. It was not their fault they repetitively hurt me or others. And how it wasn't their fault because they had some really bad things happen in their life and they just didn't understand how their actions were hurting others. I felt sorry for them and I felt needed. I was stuck in this place for a long time and my gut was screaming at me to say no, enough. But I chose to ignore it for many years. I didn't move past here and I didn't move forward into new choices and a better life until I owned my part in it, until I reflected back and looked at my part in it. This is what I mean by reflecting back on yourself and how the original choice occurred. Now, I'm not saying that you were wrong to care for others or that you need to accept what someone else did to you that hurt as being okay. I'm not saying you need to rebuild relationship with them. What I am talking about is letting go of the fight and taking back control of your life, because holding on to resentment, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick from it. It doesn't work and it doesn't serve us. On the other hand, letting go of resentment is one of the most freeing and empowering things you will ever do in your life. Nelson Mandela has a famous quote that I have on a photo board at home. As I walked out the door towards the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison. Living by his wisdom, following in his choice to walk away from the bitterness and the hatred, you too can walk through your own gate to freedom from all the negative things that once held you captive. People in responsibility mode feel more in control of their lives. They feel more hopeful and more able to make the choices and the changes they need to make a better future. It's about trusting that you'll be okay. Believing, I've made it this far in life, so why would I doubt that I wouldn't make it any further? When in responsibility mode, you're more likely and more able to see when you are out of your depth, so you know when to ask for help. You feel powerful and you are more able to see ideas outside of the box and then take steps towards those positive changes. You are more able to reflect on what you do have, more able to see the numerous blessings in your life, just as Alice did. People in blame mode believe that they can't control anything, let alone their own life, and life just feels overwhelming and hopeless much of the time. Someone who can't even recognize that there are choices, they can't own them, so therefore they will feel stuck. They will feel trapped and that life is all just too hard. This is the reality for someone in blame mode. People in responsibility mode, they know they have choices, so they look for solutions and opportunities. They believe there is always a way, and they are the ones in control of their choices. When in responsibility mode, the lights in the frontal lobe are turned on. When in blame mode, you are so stressed, the lights in the front of the brain turn off, and you can't think strategically, meaning there appears to be no choices. When truthfully, there are so many choice point moments in everything you do in every part of your day, let alone the major decisions in your life. These are far easier to see when you're in responsibility mode. A person who's in responsibility mode as a role model or leader demonstrates to others that they are in control of their life. If they don't like something in their life, they change it. It's a real feeling of being in control of their own life. When in blame mode, the example and the energy they are giving out is, this is just my lot in life. You get what you're given. You can't change any of it. It's just the way it is. Which ultimately leads to a feeling of apathy and hopelessness. When in responsibility mode, you have more willpower to make those conscious decisions and changes. Whereas in blame mode, there is no willpower and you rely on others to do everything for you, including fix your life. People in responsibility mode, they hate sympathy because they realize it is not good energy and it serves them no purpose or benefit. Whereas people in blame mode love it because they get something from it. Usually it's attention, and after a while they need it. It can be just as addictive as a drug, and it's not easy to break that cycle because they first have to reject the sympathy and everything else they get from it. When in responsibility mode, love and new ideas flow more easily to and from you. In blame mode, energy is wasted on so many negatives and everything is someone else's fault. Your family, your kids, your job. And yet it is actually those we love who suffer because you're never able to be fully present. People in responsibility mode are able to reroute their anger to solution-orientated compassion while not sacrificing their quality of life. They are more able to find a solution without taking on the anger, thereby keeping their frontal lobe lit up and searching for solution-orientated questions that will lead to positive, life-changing answers. People in blame mode are angry for others and at others. This is where people take on the it's not fair emotions and energy and the injustice of the situation. Because of the emotional charge, they can't see a solution. Remember, you're dumber when you're highly emotional? And this is where things can go pear-shaped really quickly. They tend to ask questions there is no answer to, and they're actually unhelpful, like, why me? How could they? What did I ever do to deserve this? Why does this always happen to me? But I just want to know why they did it. There is no possible positive answer to these types of questions, and they can quickly lead you down a path of self-degradation, blame, and self-justification, which will only lead you to feeling worse. We are so conditioned as a society to always assign blame, aren't we? Who did this? Who's responsible? Who can we blame? And sadly, the answer is most often, it wasn't me. Now, of course, we do need to look at what happened and why, so that we don't keep repeating the same mistakes. But this is very different to just looking for someone or something to blame. That is just a defense response, and it is not forward thinking or acting. This is not taking responsibility. When in responsibility mode, you're more likely to have an abundant mentality versus a scarcity and lack mentality. You are far more likely to see the blessings in every situation rather than loss in every situation. So, did you recognize yourself in anything I've shared? Were there any, oh my goodness, I do that moments for you? Let me tell you, I had a lot of these moments while I was studying to be a creatrix transformologist and writing this. So please don't feel bad if you see some of them in you as well. And at different stages in your life, you're going to flip between the two. That is, responsibility mode and blame mode, and that's okay. Because whether you recognize one thing or you recognize 21, it's not important. What is important is what you do next. Remember your internal GPS? That is what was triggered as you listened. That is what spoke up when you heard the examples that applied to you. For any change to occur, you first have to acknowledge where you are in blame so that you can shut it down. And secondly, you need to want to change. Now, seeing as you're on my page or in my group, I imagine you are interested in making some healthy changes in your life, which is fantastic. As I said, the most important part is what are you going to do next? What did your GPS highlight for you? And what are you going to do in response to this new direction? For now, I suggest you start paying attention to your own language. Take note of what you say when something goes not quite as you planned. Do you look for someone or something to blame? Or do you look for a solution, an idea on how to fix it? When you're with friends, start to pay more attention to the topics you discuss and what you are saying. Are you talking about positive changes and things to look forward to? Or are you staying low and talking about how other people and your life circumstances are holding you down? In the last presentation, we discussed ways to raise your self-awareness by increasing your awareness of how you talk to and about yourself. I suggest you continue with that and even take it deeper and observe your initial reaction to problems. Assess your automatic reactions and wording. Are you in blame or responsibility? As you catch yourself out in blame, stop, calm down, and reroute your thinking and make a new choice. You will find you arrive at a new destination. If you see and hear yourself in responsibility mode, take a moment to revel in how great it feels and how empowered you feel in your mind, heart, body, and soul. Notice your body language, how you are standing, where your head and shoulders are. Remember the Wonder Woman pose we talked about? Are you more in that pose? Or is your head down, your shoulders slumped, your arms hanging or even crossed? I think you already know the answer. I hope that in the weeks ahead you find yourself in that Wonder Woman pose more and more often, and you hear yourself speaking in forward, positive, responsibility type terms. I'd love to hear how you are seeing and feeling, and I'd love to hear how others are also noticing the changes in you. For now, love who you are, embrace your uniqueness, and congratulate yourself on your progress, the big and the minute. for it all matters in your heart. Bless you. Choose responsibility. Happiness will be your reward.